Welcome to Sleepy History, where the past whispers its secrets through the quiet hours of night. Tonight, we journey into the mists of medieval England to walk alongside a baron, witnessing the weight of ancient responsibilities and the quiet dignity of noble duty. Whether you're nestled beneath warm blankets as evening settles around you, or perhaps stealing a moment of calm in your busy day, this peaceful exploration awaits. This is the very first journey we'll take together. And what better way to begin than by discovering the fascinating world of those who shaped the medieval landscape with their daily choices and quiet perseverance. Share in the comments below where in the world you're listening from, whether we're under the same starlit sky or if dawn is breaking where you are. If you find comfort in these gentle journeys through time, consider subscribing to join this growing community of fellow history lovers. Together, we'll uncover so many more stories waiting in the shadows of the past. Picture Lord Edmund de Montfort stirring beneath heavy tapestries in his stone chamber, where morning chill seeps through ancient walls despite the glowing embers in his fireplace. His body rests upon a feather mattress, a luxury beyond imagining for most. Yet even this comfort cannot ease the weight that settles upon his shoulders each dawn. The year is 1347, and before the mist has lifted from his lands, his world demands attention, for a baron's day begins with the understanding that hundreds of souls depend upon his wisdom. The rough hemp of linen sheets clings to his skin as he stirs, the familiar ache in his back from yesterday's long ride across his estates, a reminder that noble birth does not exempt him from physical toll. His hands, though softer than those of his peasants, bear their own calluses, from sword practice, from gripping reins, from the countless small tasks that authority demands. The weight of the silver ring on his finger, bearing his family's seal, serves as a constant reminder that he is never simply Edmund. He is the embodiment of authority for everyone who dwells upon his lands. The sound that draws him from sleep drifts through stone walls like a gentle current. The bronze voice of the chapel bell calling his household to Lord's, the dawn prayer that marks the beginning of another day in service to both God and King. Unlike his serfs, who must stumble through darkness to tend their animals, Edmund has the privilege of awakening slowly, allowing consciousness to return gradually. Yet with this luxury comes a burden they will never know. The weight of decisions that will affect not just his own fate, but the lives and fortunes of all who call his lands home. Thomas, his chamberlain, enters with the practiced silence of a man who has served the de Montfort family for 2 decades. His weathered hands carry a pewter basin of warm water, and his lined face bears the night's intelligence. Whispered reports from the gate guards, concerns from the head groom about a lame destrier, word that the miller's wife has taken ill. Each piece of information settles into Edmund's mind like a stone dropped into still water, creating ripples of consequence that will shape the hours ahead. The ritual of dressing becomes a meditation on power and responsibility. The smooth coolness of fine linen against his skin as Thomas helps him into his undertunic, followed by a woolen shirt dyed the deep blue that proclaims his rank. The sumptuary laws that govern medieval England ensure that every thread speaks of his position. While purple remains the jealously guarded privilege of royalty, Edmund's rich blue wool bordered with silver thread announces his baronial status to all who see him. The weight of his outer robe, lined with soft squirrel fur, reminds him with each movement that privilege and duty are forever intertwined. Edmund's leather boots echo against stones worn smooth by generations of noble feet as he walks through corridors that pulse with the accumulated weight of decisions made by those who came before him. The very walls seem to breathe with the presence of his father, his grandfather, the long line of de Montfort who have carried this responsibility and passed it down like a sacred trust. The chapel embraces him with the scent of beeswax candles and the lingering smoke of yesterday's incense. Here, kneeling on cold stone that seems to draw warmth from his very bones, Edmund joins his voice with those of his household in the ancient rhythm of lords. The Latin words flow around him like a river, their meaning less important than their constancy. This same prayer has been offered at this same hour for generations beyond counting. His peasants cluster at the back of the sanctuary, their rough woolen clothes and work-worn hands a stark reminder of the great chain of being that places him here near the altar while they remain in the shadows. Father Benedict's voice rises and falls with the practiced cadence of a man who has found peace in routine, yet Edmund senses the priest's awareness of his presence, the slight change in inflection when prayers are offered for the success of his endeavors. The morning prayer anchors his day, providing a moment of stillness before the great wheel of responsibility begins to turn. The morning meal that follows offers its own quiet luxury: white bread that speaks of his status in every fine-grained bite, ale brewed from the best hops his lands can produce, perhaps a slice of cheese aged in his own cellars. Yet even this simple pleasure carries weight, for as he eats, Edmund's mind already turns to the reports that await, the decisions that cannot be postponed, the delicate balance between justice and mercy that he must strike. His study breathes with the accumulated wisdom of generations. Here, surrounded by chests containing the precious documents that define his authority, Edmund feels most keenly the weight of his inheritance. The parchments that record his rights and responsibilities seem to pulse with life. Grants from long-dead kings, marriage contracts that shaped the boundaries of his lands, records of judgments that created precedents he must now follow. Master Geoffrey, his steward, awaits with the morning's accounts, his face bearing the peculiar mixture of respect and familiarity that comes from years of shared responsibility. As he unrolls parchments covered with careful markings, Edmund feels the familiar tightening in his chest that comes with knowing every number represents not just wealth, but the well-being of those who depend upon his wisdom. The rent from the miller, the fines from last week's Manor court, the cost of repairs to the bridge, each entry tells a story of human endeavor and need. Brother Aldwin approaches with letters bearing the seals of his peers, and Edmund's pulse quickens as he recognizes the royal arms among them. The summons he has been expecting has arrived. The king requires his service in the campaign across the Channel. As he breaks the wax and reads the formal words that command his attendance, he calculates not just in coin, but in human cost. The knights he must provide, the equipment they require, the absence of strong hands during the coming months. Each obligation ripples outward like stones cast into a pond, touching lives he may never directly encounter. Edmund's morning ride through his estates becomes a meditation on the delicate web of relationships that sustain his world. The powerful muscles of his destrier move beneath him, the horse's ears flicking forward at familiar sounds, the trust between them built through countless hours together. The crisp autumn air carries the scent of wood smoke from cottage chimneys, the earthy smell of fields prepared for winter, the green freshness of morning dew on grass that will soon yield to frost. As he pauses at the edge of a field where his peasants bend to their eternal labor, Edmund sees in their movements the same rhythm that has sustained life here for generations beyond memory. Their backs curve in the familiar arc of those who work with their hands, their faces bearing the weathered acceptance of those who understand their place. Yet their eyes, when they lift to acknowledge his presence, hold their own form of dignity, the quiet pride of those who know their labor feeds not just their own families, but the entire world they inhabit. The Manor court that follows tests Edmund's wisdom in ways no book could prepare him for. Here, in the great hall where his ancestors dispensed justice, he must weigh the testimony of neighbors, the evidence of disputed boundaries, the complex web of obligations and traditions that govern rural life. Each case demands not just knowledge of the law, but understanding of human nature. When to show mercy, when firmness is required, how to preserve the delicate balance that makes his rule acceptable to those who have no choice but to accept it. As he listens to a dispute between two villagers over the grazing rights to a small meadow, Edmund feels the weight of Solomon's crown. The widow who speaks with trembling voice of her need to pasture her single cow, the young farmer whose expanding family requires every blade of grass he can claim. Both deserve justice, yet justice itself seems to divide like a river around the stone of necessity. The afternoon brings Edmund to the practice yard, where the ring of steel on steel speaks to the martial aspects of his responsibilities. Here, stripped to his shirt despite the autumn chill, he works through the familiar patterns of swordplay that have shaped his body since boyhood. The weight of his blade in his hand, the burn in his shoulders as he parries and thrusts, the way his breath mists in the cooling air, all remind him that noble birth brings not just privilege, but the obligation to defend what he has been given to protect. His knights, younger men whose loyalty he has earned through fair treatment and shared hardship, push him to his limits with the casual intensity of those who know their duty includes keeping their lord sharp. The bruises he will carry from today's practice are badges of honor, proof that he remains worthy of the authority he wields. When war comes, and it always comes, these men will follow him not because they must, but because they have seen him bleed beside them in preparation. As evening approaches and shadows begin to lengthen across his lands, Edmund finds himself in the great hall that serves as the heart of his domain. Here, where the massive fireplace throws dancing shadows on walls hung with tapestries that tell the stories of his lineage, his household gathers for the day's most important ritual. The evening feast is theater as much as sustenance, a daily performance that reinforces the social order upon which everything depends. The warmth of the fire against his back as Edmund takes his place at the high table, elevated above his household, not just by the wooden platform beneath his feet, but by the accumulated weight of tradition and expectation. The pewter plates that reflect the firelight, the silver cup that holds wine, carried hundreds of miles from distant vineyards, the fine white bread that proclaims his status in every crumb. All speak to the abundance that his stewardship has created. Yet each luxury carries the silent reminder of those who labor to make such comfort possible. The conversations that flow around him as the meal progresses weave together the threads of his world. Reports from his bailiff about the coming harvest, word from his marshal about the readiness of his horses, quiet discussions with his knights about the summons that will soon call him to war. Each voice adds its note to the symphony of authority, yet beneath the surface lies the constant current of calculation. Who can be trusted? What alliances must be maintained? Which problems require immediate attention? Lady Margaret, his wife, brings to these evening hours her own form of wisdom. Her quiet words about the servants who have fallen ill, her observations about the mood of the village women, her gentle suggestions about charity that might ease tensions among his tenants, all remind Edmund that authority has many faces, and that the soft power of compassion often accomplishes what force cannot. Her presence beside him speaks to the partnerships that make noble life possible, the marriages that unite not just hearts but lands, not just individuals but dynasties. His children, when they join the evening gathering, represent both Edmund's greatest joy and his heaviest responsibility. In their faces he sees not just his own features reflected, but the future of everything he has worked to build and preserve. Their education weighs upon his mind, the sons who must learn to bear the burden he now carries, the daughters who must be prepared for marriages that will strengthen the family's position. Each laugh, each question, each moment of childish wonder reminds him that his decisions today will echo through their tomorrows. As the fire burns lower and the evening draws toward its close, Edmund feels the familiar mixture of satisfaction and exhaustion that marks the end of another day in service to duty. The warmth of wine in his belly, the weight of responsibility in his chest, the quiet pride of obligations met and challenges faced, all combine to create the complex emotional landscape that defines noble life. His final duty takes him to his private solar, where by candlelight he reviews the letters that must be written, the accounts that require his personal attention, the countless small decisions that will shape tomorrow's possibilities. Here, in the pool of golden light cast by flame against darkness, he feels most keenly the isolation that comes with authority, the knowledge that while he is surrounded by those who depend upon him, the ultimate responsibility for their welfare rests upon his shoulders alone. The ledger that records his tenants' obligations seems to breathe with life in the flickering light, each name representing not just a source of income, but a family whose fortunes rise and fall with his decisions. The careful notations in his clerk's precise hand tell stories of human struggle and perseverance. The widow who has fallen behind in her rent, the young farmer whose crops failed, the artisan whose skill has earned him a reduction in his obligations. As Edmund finally makes his way to his chamber, the castle around him settles into the rhythms of night. The guards who pace the walls, their footsteps echoing in the darkness, stand vigilant against threats both seen and imagined. The servants who bank the fires and secure the doors move through routines perfected by generations of practice. The very stones seem to exhale the accumulated warmth of the day, preparing for the slow surrender to dawn's inevitable arrival. His bed offers comfort that he knows is denied to most of the world. The feather mattress that cradles his body, the woolen blankets that ward off the night's chill, the linen sheets that speak of luxury in every thread, all remind him of the privileges that come with his birth and station. Yet even as his body relaxes into sleep's embrace, his mind continues to turn over the problems that tomorrow will bring, the decisions that await his wisdom, the delicate balance between justice and mercy that he must maintain. In his dreams, perhaps, Edmund walks through fields where golden grain waves in endless abundance, where his people live in prosperity and peace, where the weight of responsibility feels less like a burden and more like a gift. But even in sleep, he remains what birth and duty have made him, the axis around which his small world turns, the foundation upon which hundreds of lives depend, the inheritor of a tradition that stretches back through the mists of time. The medieval baron's existence was one of constant tension between privilege and responsibility, between personal desire and public duty. In understanding the weight carried by men like Lord Edmund, we glimpse not just the structures of medieval society, but the timeless challenge of leadership itself, the burden of those who must make decisions not just for themselves, but for all who depend upon their wisdom and strength. As sleep claims us in our own time, perhaps we can feel the echo of that ancient weight, the ghost of responsibilities that shaped the medieval world and continue to influence our own. The stone walls that sheltered Lord Edmund have long since crumbled, but the human struggles he faced, the balance between justice and mercy, the weight of inherited obligation, the challenge of earning loyalty, remain as relevant today as they were in that distant autumn of 1347. Rest well, knowing that we have walked for a time alongside those who came before us, understanding a little more deeply the complex web of duty and privilege that shaped their world. In their quiet dignity and persistent hope, we find reflections of our own humanity and reminders of the enduring bonds that connect us across the vast expanse of time.